this is the best thing on the page that makes the whole thing feel like real. This is something that I see a lot in portfolios, is this like side-by-side thing. If you're going in assuming that I, as a hiring manager, am going to read every word, that's like a big mistake. And it's just noise to me. And it like frustrates me as the viewer. My initial reactions were that the entire, like the hero section and that first, like the overview section, it was all about heirloom. Like it read almost more like marketing copy than a portfolio. Like even the sentence, like we finally get to this like small subtext in the overview section that says heirloom needed help with a redesign of the platform. And like, that's where Josh was looped in, but it's still like, he's the like object of the sentence. Like it's still not even like coming from him. It felt a little bit weird. Mm-hmm. The other big reaction that I had was, I think as a rule of thumb, like people should be able to just read the headlines or the headings on your page and have some clue of what's going on. Like the overarching narrative should be apparent from the headings. Mm-hmm. And I shouldn't be required to read all of the small subtext to like get the story. And I can read every heading on this page and it's all generic. Yeah. And so it's like, it doesn't optimize for skimmability again. And again, like, it's like this page, like if you're going in assuming that I, as a hiring manager, am going to read every word, that's like a big mistake. Like you can't assume that, because I'm not. Like I'm going to be scrolling. Like I'm going to be moving and looking for things like what catches my eye. And if I'm just seeing like the things that catch my eye are like the name of the company, overview, problem, why is it happening, solution, what can we do, design process, discovery. Like it's not saying anything. And the longer that goes on, the less inclined I am to continue scrolling, basically.
It feels generic. Yeah, big time. Yeah.
Pause real fast. I wanted to call out this white on red is not accessible. Cheers, boys.
Cheers.
Come on now, dog.
I made a note about that too, because like it's accentuated by the fact that like the white black combination makes it even harder. Like I reread both of those twice and it was just super hard for me to like, my eyes just like went problem disconnected, and then I had to be like, whoa, what's happening, zoom back out, and then I could keep reading the sentence just because it was that was tough.
Yes, 100%.
What else, Red? Anything else that came to mind?
I already kind of said this point about like not giving me an idea of where we're going. Like I was experiencing a lot without really having a sense of like, I still don't actually know what we're working on. Yeah. And if I'm halfway down the page and I still don't know really what we're working on, that's hard. This is something that I see a lot in portfolios, is this like side-by-side thing where we're dropping in super robust, like stickies and charts and these like really information dense images, and you put them in like a 2-panel approach, and I just can't read anything. I can't read any of it, and it's just noise to me, and it's like it like frustrates me as the viewer a little bit. And so it's not like the end of the world, but like I don't know, I guess like I almost think that maybe people have this feeling that, well, if I show how complex this chart is, that will be like my gold star. Like, look at all the research judging by the number of stickies. And it's like, maybe, but right now you are communicating. Like you are communicating and I have to understand what you are saying. And this does you a disservice. So like either figure out a way to like, maybe you vertically stack and make the image stretch and give me a chance to read it, or just like come up with a different presentation that like tells me the story without the expectation that I would like actually study all of this, like the entire like card grid kind of thing.
Yeah. And even then, even with the layouts corrected, that's one thing that I noted in this case study, is that this section specifically about the discovery and all these methodologies put one after another, it felt like such a checklist that didn't really have like a meaning. Like I didn't know why we went from user flow to sitemap. I didn't know why we went from feature inventory to user flow. It just feels like there is no transition between any of these whatsoever. It's just like, here's what I did, here's the next thing, here's the next thing, here's the next thing. It's just like, what do I do with this?
There was no why. Like, why did you do this?
Why?
Like, what did you learn from this? Like, Okay, you did 12 interviews. That's great. I mean, holy hell, you had a good amount of time to get some interviews, and holy hell, you probably learned a lot. That's great. But like, what did you pull out from that? There are these quotes over here, but like, how does this matter? And you're forcing all of us to read every little bit of this paragraph versus exactly, because like it didn't extract for us what mattered. Like basically, the way I think about portfolios and presenting as designers is that you're looking to extract the most meaningful information and make it easy for someone to understand, so you get support for your designs. And like that right now, that's not happening here. Like, first of all, this in-depth interview is to this section and it bleeds into the next. Like there's no alignment other than center aligned. And the problem with that is it's unclear that this could belong to that and this could belong to that. It feels like a run-on like column over here. And then it feels very disjointed. And so for me, it was really hard to kind of follow along without it being like, oh, check, did this thing. Oh, okay, standard UX thing, check, did this thing. But there was no why I did this thing, and the story was not consistent. And also the other thing is kind of we talked about before, and you were talking about this, Rid, like, yes, there's a problem and overview section, but the overview doesn't provide me what the solution actually was. Like, what did you actually come out with?
Yeah.
What was what was the final outcome? And then there are no screens I can even look at other than this section, which I can't even zoom in on. So I'm forced to kind of take a look at it. And by the way, I checked this purple, the white on purple. Cheers. It is
cheers, guys. Not accessible.
Not accessible.
Well, your point on the checklist versus the story is like, that's spot on. It was really well said. Like it does. That's, you're right. Like it feels like there was a Google list, and it's like what needs to be included, and it's like isolated section, isolated section, isolated section.
It's like ChatGPT send me a list of the 10 things I need to do in UX. this. All right, I'm good.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, it could be. You know, this is nothing against you, Joshua. I think you're probably a great person, but you could be a conduit for ChatGPT in the real world if you wanted to do UX stuff. To say, I learned this stuff, ChatGPT, what should I do next?
And by the way, all the way at the bottom of his case study, there is a picture of him. There is a picture of him. Yes, there is. So
Joshua, you missed.
Yes, put that on the homepage, on the About page, for sure. But anyway, so one thing that I want to say, like every single time I open up a mobile case study, I always turn to my mobile and check if it's even well laid out, if the hierarchy is good. And Joshua, like if there was one thing you need to fix is your mobile experience, because right now this case study is like unreadable on mobile. Some white text is on a white background. So for example, the problem section that is in red, when you put it on mobile, it's actually that red goes away and it's white on white, and we cannot even read the problem text anymore. And a bunch of problems on mobile that just make it unreadable. And because it's a mobile case study, I'm just like, this is not good.
Yeah.
You know, I think what I'm hearing is basically it's harder to read, not following the story. And then like we're not even gotten into the visuals so much, partly because we couldn't even talk about it because they're so small. You can't even see some of this stuff. Like you can't even like actually click in to understand how all this stuff works. But from what I can tell, and I mean this with all due respect, Joshua, and the visuals look dated to me. They don't look something like they're new. And so because of that, it doesn't look modern. So like, especially hiring for UX positions, I've seen a couple things that are inaccessible on this. Like I know that some people think that UX designers don't really tackle visuals. Like as a UX generalist, you absolutely will. And so it makes me nervous about like if I were hiring for this position, I would feel nervous that you didn't know. Like I'd have to be really spending a lot of time with you to develop your UI chops to come in and do a really solid job. And like that's fine. That's fine. Like I'm not sure where you are in your career with learning this stuff, and like there's plenty of ways to learn, but like definitely spend a lot of time on that. Like really hone that in, because there are plenty of projects as a UX designer where the research you're using is like is based on what you're finding online, and like you're not getting a full chance to do user interviews if you don't have the time for it, like, which is very common. And so like at that point, you are going to be spending more time on the visuals, and you're going to have to be the one who's performing on that one. And so like keep practicing that. Keep practicing and improving your UI skills for sure.
And like Reed said, fix your shadows because like eyes just go right there. And the other thing that's really annoying to me is the image on the right hand side where the bottom tab bar is just feels so Android, and I'm on an iOS, I'm on an iPhone, and it just feels like this is so disconnected. Like, I'm wondering now if he knows his Android versus iOS patterns, because I don't know. I mean, at least to me, the bottom bar screams Android. It doesn't say iOS.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Like, just like a few really quick hitting practical like visual suggestions. One would be like, if you're gonna do mobile mockups like this, grab the iOS UI kit in Figma.
Yeah.
Like Joey Banks makes an awesome one. Even just with like the real iOS UI, immediately all of this is gonna look better. For one, like we kind of have like this fake status bar that it doesn't exist. And it just makes it sets a weird context, and it's unfortunate because like that's not even part of your actual UI, but it's like hurting your presentation.
Yeah.
So like grab the real iOS kit library. Two, pretty much across the board, don't be afraid to just shrink all of your icons. Like these tab bar icons are
So
humongous.
big.
And so it's very, very rare that you would use an icon over 24 pixels on mobile. Like when in doubt, just put a 16 pixel icon there, maybe 20 pixel, and like it's going to look a lot cleaner and a lot more professional.
Yeah.
And then for the shadows, download the smooth shadow plugin. No spaces. Like you can't mess it up. Like you don't have to like manually configure anything. Like there are really, really great tools that will just create very soft shadows. And it really just comes down to like, you just want softer shadows. They're just really, really heavy right now. And that's why it's drawing so much of our attention. It's just because like the contrast level on the shadows is somewhat aggressive.
They need a lot more blur. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's somewhat aggressive. It came to mind.
Put a somewhat in front of it.
Like you just like get in like, oh my god, shadows up.
Bruh, chill.
all
makes
the
me
blur.
want to cheers on this one.
Yeah.
So aggressive. Let's go.
One thing that I did really like, I kind of just wish it was like earlier to set the context, is like, I love that there is the GIF in the bottom, like in the forever keepsake section. Like the whole layout is small, but like having some kind of motion that makes it, this was like the most real the project felt.
Yes.
And I feel like you could lean into that, play it up more. Like maybe it's like only that GIF in one full section, so I can see like more of the details and the interactions. Maybe you also use it higher up so I can get like more of a context to like interpret. You're creating this lens that I can use to view all of your like stickies and flows and everything. Like when I don't have the lens and the frame of reference, they just look generic. And so this is the best thing on the page that makes the whole thing feel like
Nice.
real.
Solid.
Yeah.
It makes it feel solid.
Yeah.
You know, coming with that in mind, Doug, you said feel real. Like it sounded like this was a real project for a real client, like based on what I was reading. But like that was never really 100% clear to me, and it was only based on like my.
I didn't
guess.
know.
Yeah,
I didn't-
and it
I
was
didn't actually
the only
know.
reason I saw that is like the owner of Heirloom, Terry Smith, had a clear vision for the platform. Like there's a couple things, like a couple sentences that keyed me into this probably being a real project, but at the same time, it's still unclear to me. And so like, I'm not saying you have to have a label saying I was paid for this or something like that, but it's part of the story, right? Like the story at the beginning, like I was brought in as a UX designer on this project by the owner or whatever. That could be part of your overview section, talking through what was going on. And that this was real, that you worked with real clients. Like that's a big deal. It's a big deal because that means you worked through the entire process and you actually handed off stuff to developers.
It's a good point, because I didn't actually get that. I didn't get that, and a lot of it was some of the typography, and I wasn't reading as much as maybe he thought that I was reading. An easy way that like something I wrote down that you just reminded me of is like, when did this happen? Is this 5 years ago? Is it 2 years ago? Was it last month?
Yeah,
I wasn't sure, and if you would have just added the date, it would have been like, oh shoot, like this was like a cool thing. Like, and I think you can tie that into this something to make it more clear that this was a real project for a real company.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, well we have 47 seconds left on this. So ratings, gentlemen.
Oh, here we go again.
Ludovic,
going
you go
last.
first. Look, okay. I can see we put Rid on the spot every time. Ludovic, you first.
All right, I'll go first then. I think that it's between needs and overall and a man. I mean, there are some pointers that tell me like, yeah, that there is some skill that, you know, for sure it's green, but it's there. And I can tell that you don't need much to go to the next level, but I don't see it yet. And I don't get a sense of the story, don't get a sense of what you did, of when you did it, of all the markers that make me connect to your work. And yeah, I mean, that's where I stand. I give it a 1.5 star.
Okay. You know, at first when I like scanned this like really quickly and looked through it, I was thinking, oh, you know, we're looking probably at like a potentially 3 or 4 star initially. Like that's where I thought it might be falling. But after going through everything, I think I agree perfectly with Ludovic on that, where it's somewhere between a 1 and a 2. It needs an overhaul and a meh. And which actually means, gentlemen, that we like potentially need to take a sip, because that's 3 in a row from at least 2 of us.
I was giving away my vote, I guess.
And so, like, yeah, I mean, I think we already covered it, but, you know, telling a story, telling why you did something, not displaying it as a checklist, providing more information up front, including the overview, like a true overview of like what the problem was, the context, and the solution, alongside of the actual screens that finish this, like better layout overall, accessible colors, stuff like that. I think, you know, we obviously talked about it before, but definitely between the 1 and the 2. And so, Rid, finishing us out.
I mean, that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in the same place. Yeah. I think like my biggest challenge to you, Joshua, would be take copywriting really, really seriously for this as well. Like this could be like, honestly, if I had to pick a whole number, I'd pick a 1, but this could be a 3 with just your copywriting. And like, that was the biggest gap for me. If you told the story in writing and made it a little bit easier for me to skim, and maybe made certain area, like tried to trim down certain paragraphs that maybe there was like a core idea that was just kind of buried in like longer text. I really think that the copywriting alone was the difference between this being a 1 or a 3.
Yeah. I think you're right on that. And then when you fix everything else on top of that, you could easily get to a 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But if you don't
100%.
fix your mobile experience, you'll still be at a 1 even if you fix all that.
Yeah.